Admonition the 11th, Honour Promises. After the bridge, the drive swung left under a line of Scottish white beam, sessile oak and immature Scots pine, and then upwards to a large rightward turn around an unkempt bracken-bracketed lawn. This second corner unwound onto a long straight approach to the castle. At this stage we didn't register the fork there, covered by grass, camouflaged by shrub, as well as our castle-focused inattention. We'd come back to the turning later, not that day, but at one of our next visits. But mark it, dear reader, that fork is important. Shrouded in shadow, rough, potholed, and strewn with wind-blown branches and pine needles, the drive slowed us further to a swaying crawl. We took in the hedge of overlarge and consequently blousy Lelandii to our left, and the 5 exotic evergreens to our right. The first, third, and last of these were California or West Coast cedars, with low, looping branches. The second was a jagged, columnar noble fir. The fourth, a massive monkey puzzle, one of the largest I'd ever seen, its great scooping branches of sharp, enfolded, fleshy leaves culminating in a perfectly formed green dome above us. This was the green tunnel of the bridge approach magnified into a more formal, but still unkempt, verdant arcade, accentuating even further our anticipation of what we were to find rising from the sunlit gravel of the castle's front apron. As we slipped out of the green shadow of the arcade into the watery May sunlight, which washed over us from the right, we were distracted by a sudden, very large gravel embrasure to our left, revealed as the line of Lelandii turned a corner and marched their fragrant way away from us. 2 retired-looking static caravans mouldered around a rash-infested quadrangle of grass, overhung by yet more alien exotic and crowded by the similarly imported banks of purple-flowered rhododendron ponticum. We registered the space, the temporary combination, and the half-hearted attempts to landscape the incumbent flora into a semblance of order. Inevitably, though, as the car edged on, my pressure on the brake only slowing our progress marginally, our attention was drawn forward toward the building which massed impressively along the left-hand edge of the drive ahead. A single-storey, rounded turret with candle-snuffer roof and slightly wonky lead-topped apex gave rise, both leftward and beyond, to a carefully composed stone outcropping of flying buttresses, castellations, grand towers, and sandstone-carved heraldry. Our car drew alongside the curtain wall which protected the ground floor of the old house from view and revealed a beautifully wrought insignia with the word Le Chadoux emblazoned at its foot. 2 hands clasped each other around a single dagger blade, and above that the clan names Fletcher and Stewart were inscribed. I swung the car in front of the wall, all the time looking up at this heraldic description of the martial alliance between 2 old and well-regarded clans. It was our first indication that this had been seat of Clan Fletcher, and that the building, like so many in Scotland, had a history which intersected with the great events of the last 4 or 5 centuries. Clans, eh, Sadie? Well, yes, you'd expect that. Big house equals clan equals history. But I wonder how it came to be in this state. The damage looks recent. We alighted from the car and proceeded to walk around the building. There had been a fire in the castle. That much was evident from the blackened joists, broken slate, and uncleared rubbish we could see through the narrow gaps in the boards which covered the windows. Floors had collapsed under the weight of the fallen roof, but none of the internal walls looked compromised. Lath and plaster, however, bulged and cracked from every vertical surface, held precariously in place by rotten dwangs, fractured wall plates, bulging skirting, or the occasional fragment of dado rail. Great swathes of de-insulated wire hung in as veils across doorways, and the plumbing made intricate 3-dimensional mazes of the smaller spaces. When we got into the house a little later, we found that the great central light well of the larger building, with its broad and still carpeted oak staircase, was littered with balusters, newels, plaster, and more ogee than I'd ever seen, all of it fire or water damaged. The top-storey stringer of the castle staircase and landing were already peeling away from the wall, and the first-storey landing floor looked positively dangerous, with floorboards buckling upwards across its width. The sheer amount of clearance required and the danger of collapsing masonry was deeply intimidating. A 20-metre cube of stone and castle was, by far, the biggest project we'd ever contemplated. As we stood looking up through the last 2 flights of stairs at the sky, Sadie remarked, "Oh, it must have been stunning before the fire." "Yeah, it would have been. Do you really think we should take this on?" "Yeah, I really think we should." I smiled at her. "After all, I did promise you a castle, and I always come through on my promises." Sadie chuckled. "Well, you did. But I meant one with a roof, Charlie, like the Glen." "And we shall put one on this, like the Glen." "We shall." Sadie paused. "Poor old thing. I wonder how it happened." "Yeah," I said, "and why they weren't insured."